Since its launch in 2005, Broad Street Review has sought to promote the exchange of viewpoints rather than any particular point of view. To that end, we welcome commentary from professionals and amateurs alike about the performing and visual arts, as well as any other field of interest to our eclectic group of contributors. The following interview was submitted to Broad Street Review, powered by Rep Radio. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I am in a very familiar place surrounded by so much history. I'm in the Langworthy Lounge at the Walnut Street Theater, and I'm here to talk about the production at the Independent Studio on 3, Oleanna, by David Mamet, directed by Deb Marcucci. Mm-hmm. And I'm here with the cast, Jessica Johnson and Johnnie Hobbs Jr. You have no idea. I was sitting in the audience opening night, and I'm saying, this is like a juggernaut celebrated in the community for your efforts and your talent. And Jessica's star is on the rise, and it's just like, this is a match, because this production is often staged as if it were a boxing match. And because it is kind of a fight. It's this, You're right. But I'm looking at the dynamic of it, and I'm saying, wow, we're in for this. Throw away whatever you thought Oleanna was. In this moment, let's kind of reset and pretend that we don't know anything about this, and just process this in this moment, in this space.
And it's got so much history to it that sometimes it's hard for people to do that.
Yeah.
Because people come with a certain assumptions, particularly with Mamet, thinking that it's got to be done a certain kind of way. Mm-hmm. And Mamet has this whole castigating attitude about acting anyway, in some ways that you feel. But our director was not persuaded by that. Our director had her feelings, had her obligations that she felt, and she was very clear in terms of how she saw it and how she wanted to sort of see it executed. So
it's almost like he forgets. It's almost like it's forgotten that once you publish this, you put it out into the world, so that it can be interpreted by many other artists.
Absolutely,
based on the foundation you've laid.
But you can tell by the foundations and the writing within the writing that he's very particular about how he wants things to be interpreted. And I think that Debbie did a really wonderful job of trying to blur the lines as much as she could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he's very clear about how he feels about these characters and how they live in the real world, how they're represented, which is heartbreaking.
Well, what I do think is interesting is that for a second, we just have to think about the time this piece was introduced to the world.
Right.
And then we think about today.
Right.
So, the connotations and the way it feels, it is sort of a test in a sense, or a little bit of an exercise, to kind of walk out into the world and say, is that fire, is that intensity still there, or is there some news cycle that's just coming in? Because we're always getting breaking news, and we get something that changes our thought process, or at least kind of adds, another layer onto what we already think about. Right. So I thought that was interesting, because as soon as I said, I'm going to see Oleanna, the questions I got were, why is that play being produced right now?
Right.
But then it's like, okay, so you have that question, and that's why you should come see it. Right. Because you already have a question as to why is this still relevant? Right. So this is what we hope to find out, when we go.
Right. I mean, one of the first things that, at the table we were reading, one of the first things that Debbie asked is, do you think that the play is written from the perspective of from the male's point of view. And my first response was, absolutely, I think it is. I mean, I think it's written with his sensibilities being more felt than the females. And
there's no female voice in it.
Right, absolutely. There's no female voice in it.
I mean, there's no care for Carol at all, just in terms of the trajectory of her story.
Right.
There's no care given to her, and especially given how he feels about actors in general.
Right, absolutely.
But there is, I mean, she does have. There are moments where she really she shines, and I'm wondering where those come from. If the focus isn't really, if it's not from her view. So it's like, okay, so you do have these moments where you do give her some meaty opportunities to really express who she is. But yeah, you're right.
I mean, with our sensibilities today and the filters that we look at today are very different than 1994. But one day, Jessica said something very interesting. The irony of that he wrote it out of the Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas thing, and but it's written, but it's to my understanding, it's normally done with European actors. It's normally done with
it's normally done with white actors.
White actors, and it's just an interesting.
Yeah, I remember my first experience with Oleanna, and actually all of Mamet's plays that I've seen. Never have any people of color in
except for race.
Race.
That is the one I have
not. Black woman is kind of like another Carol, basically.
Right.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
So there may be some people that aren't as learned as we are. So let's tell them. Let's bring them up to speed. Tell us about Oleanna.
Oleanna is the story of John and Carol, whose lives intersect when Carol comes in to discuss a paper that she has written. And Mamet likes to drop you in the middle of an interaction, so we don't know really how long Carol has been there. We've decided for ourselves in the room kind of how long these interactions started prior to when the scene actually begins, before the lights come up. But essentially, it's the unraveling of John and Carol's, and re-raveling, I guess, rewrapping of identity and experience. And Mamet, the way that he writes, he really puts emphasis on the words, and he feels that the words are enough. And so you kind of breathe life into those circumstances as best you can. But what's happening is twofold, right? So there's the conversation about education and privilege of education, and higher education in particular, which is like what's happening on the surface. And underneath all of that is really about the patriarchy and male privilege. And it is very much so written from a 90s perspective, but it's still very much so horrifically relevant today. And so I won't spoil the ending, because the ending is probably really what makes the piece. But it's interesting to be with audiences as they're kind of listening and seeing all the things that are, everything that is said and everything that goes unsaid. Because the unsaid speaks such volumes. And the further along you get until the end, the more you feel the audience struggle with what is right and what is wrong. And who is right and who is wrong. And in our piece, in our interpretation of this piece, I think that the director does a beautiful job of graying those lines so that you have to decide morally from moment to moment what is right and what is wrong.
And it seems that John, his manhood seems to be in some ways tied to his ability to obtain tenure. And he seems to be sort of at a point where he's... where it's just at the precipice of whether he will receive it or whether he will not receive it, and that's a big issue in the play, as well as his ability to obtain property and valuable things. Because oftentimes these guys, when you don't receive tenure, oftentimes the universities let you go. So there was a great bit of tension connected to his ability to receive tenure one way or the other, and also it's connected to property and value and his manhood in many ways. You know. So.
And it's interesting because we'd mentioned before that mostly we see European actors in this role.
Yes.
But now we have 2 African American actors in this role,
right.
and it almost feels like there's a monologue missing from John in terms of why is everything on the phone so important?
Right.
Because this ability to actually own property, to get really close to that, so close you can touch it, you can taste it, and to have tenure is a validation.
Yes, it is.
As
it is.
As
I'm trying to wonder what that monologue would be. I'm not sure. I've never really thought of that way.
Because I guess
missing.
I might be imparting a little bit of myself onto that, because I'm thinking about like what is the value of ownership,
right?
Of having some place to call home. I'm also thinking of A Raisin in the Sun a little bit.
Yes.
Why that was such a struggle, and why he was willing to go down these like treacherous roads to get to that point.
Yes.
So I was thinking that a little bit too, where it was just like, I wonder, maybe that's why this was so strictly enforced, like how
the fact that we're black and doing it there's a kind of a void that I think it's a void there, but I think we fill it culturally. I don't know if that's genetic memory or whatever that is, but there are oftentimes the things that Jessica says to me, not my sex, not my race, and she says, not my class, and you have no idea how difficult it is for us to come to this. All of that stuff sort of speaks to me in a different way than I think it might with a European actor. Yeah. So.
I'm wondering, so the thing we notice as soon as we walk in is the design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's entirely white.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. And was there any discussion of as to why?
I think she wanted it not to be white. Right?
So the stage, they initially, when they sent us the design, they said it was going to be gray. And so I guess that the paint is gray, but up against all this melanin, you can't tell that it's gray. So we're like, sure, it's gray. But it's not quite the right shade of gray.
But I'm immediately in there thinking black and white.
Yeah,
of course you are. Absolutely.
Which I don't think... I don't think that was like a nail they wanted to hit on the head. Right. But it happens. And like that's the second piece that I've done with like an all white set. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know if that's helpful to the piece.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's a happy accident given the subscription base here. Because I think that this piece would be different. With a different, it is, no matter what the audience is, but I think with a majority black audience, it would be different. Because it's not just a question of race. I think when it comes to tenure, it's also about power.
Yeah.
And when I hear things about tenure and about owning land and how John inhabits space versus Carol, I think it's the conversation that we don't have in the black community, right? About how black men and women and non-binary, all of us interact together, and who in terms of identity has more power, and how that power is utilized at points, given our cultural differences with white people.
Yeah. But there's so much anxiety in this piece too, because like when you think about just the fact that he's that John's having this conversation with Carol in the room.
Yes.
But also the phone is ringing, and it's a phone with a seriously long cord. And we don't have the ability to send a text message.
No.
Or, everything is so urgent. Like, this call is coming through because it matters.
Right.
And so every time you got to pick it up.
Right.
But then you start to realize that there is something, even though he is going through the effort to pick up the phone, he is trying to get off the phone.
At the same time.
Right. And then you start to you're like, but why is it, this is obviously important, what's going on the phone.
Yes.
Why not just table this meeting for another time?
I think if we tabled the meeting, I don't think that David Mamet will have an opportunity to write words.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the words come out of all of that tension, come out of all of those phone calls. Obviously, there are words that are waiting in that phone to speak. Yeah. And I think that all of that is what David Mamet relishes tremendously, his ability to write and see what that feels like. And it's extremely challenging.
Well, it is a job well done to keep. How do you keep these characters in the box?
Right.
And that creates that tension.
Right.
Because they can't leave.
Right.
And there's there's only one way out, so it's not like, you know what, I'm just gonna go. And because even in the moments where Carol prepares to leave, she still has to pass John in order to do it. And John is on the phone and he's back and forth and not really giving her an opportunity to leave.
Right.
Which can seem innocent in a sense,
but it's not
until it starts to unfold and you realize, oh wait.
But I think even then, I think the question of whether it's innocent or not implies that it is there's a right and a wrong, or that it's not uncommon. And I think as a woman, it's very common to be placed second to whatever happens, especially back in the 90s. If you look at what women were being paid, the number of rights that women are still being denied that just weren't even a conversation then. I really enjoy the chuckles that I get from women in the audience in particular, because I know that underneath all of that of like, oh, there's the phone again, is it's like, of course he's going to answer the phone because he's going to answer it, because he knows that he can answer the phone and he can get what he needs from everyone because of his privilege. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times because we miss the fact that like neither one of these people are very nice, right? Mamet doesn't write nice people. They're fully like realized, flawed individuals with all their baggage and all their history, and all of the history of what the world has to offer them or what it doesn't offer them. It is.
There is an interesting visual there, and I don't know if it's on the page. I've never actually read Oleanna, but
it's
I've only experienced it. But the visual in terms of the direction, he's always standing. He always appears to be towering over her. His moments where he touches her, where it's not even necessary to do so.
Yes.
He is mansplaining.
Yes.
A lot.
Yes.
And there's a part of you that says, well, he's the professor. He's
he has the right to do that,
of educating, but he's also in this space where arguably she came to him for help, assistance, and so he doesn't have to put on that. He doesn't have to put it on so strong, but he does.
But our director was clever enough to feel that we wanted to strategically place those things in there, the touches and the things like that, where it would sort of it would say something. It would say something. You can feel when someone touches you when you shouldn't be touching them. I mean, at the times that I touch Jessica on there, I say, I know I shouldn't be doing that. I wouldn't normally do. Johnnie Hobbs wouldn't normally do that, but I'm doing it now because we're trying to tell the story, and ultimately, it has a path that it takes. But it's you're seeing everything there that's been strategically placed in directorially to tell the story as well. Because it can be done without any touching at all, but I think the height difference is something that plays out. However, I think it also, I don't know if it evens out, but at least in the third act, there are times that I'm down, and that Jessica is very clearly over me, and with a sense of authority and a new kind of and I appreciate that, and I feel that's where the story takes us. So
and that is. That was something I was just talking to one of my coworkers today. Yeah, I was like, by the end, the hair's done up. She looks professional. Yeah, she's got a briefcase and she's walking and she's got a little bit of confidence. She's confident.
Yes,
very confident in her position.
Clearly.
Whereas before, even though at the beginning Carol has all these notes, and she is still lost. In that sense, So when you get through it, you're just like, but she's meticulous. She pays attention to detail.
Right.
So, of course, Act 2 unravels the way it does.
Sure.
Because, if you're paying attention, we've been given that information in Act 1.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, when I was thinking about all that, I had these more rhetorical questions inside where I'm going like, wait a minute, but she prepares so well. Mm-hmm. So, how apparent is her awareness of what is going on in this situation? In the first act, because she comes back in the second act with a little bit more information, some resource from her group, and kind of like it's kind of like let's take it back to boxing. Kind of got a pep talk from her corner, and now she's back and ready to fight.
Right.
The text is very interesting because within the text, the only time that touch actually happens that's noted is in the second act. Mm-hmm. When the instance of let go of me, would you please, would somebody help me, please, the close of the second act is the only one that he denotes, which is outrageous to me. It just, life just doesn't work that way, and that's one of those moments where I'm like, a man with a very specific point of view wrote this, and it is very naive of him and very strategic of him to think that this professor would only touch this person one time in their
it would just seem so random.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Right.
And to plant that seed is very intentional, and I really appreciate Debbie's interpretation and recognizing that that was not the world. Yeah. And he doesn't mean to write realistically, which he likes to talk about in his book. But, I think it would be irresponsible of us to not recognize the dimensions of these people, because she's also not dumb. She's not stupid. What he says is right. The real question is, what is she actually angry about, I think?
The reset is the audience's sort of visual of moments to come when he presents the offer to her to start over, the clean slate.
Oh, yeah, right.
And as soon as I hear that, I'm like, oh, no. Why would you do that?
You mean to start class over?
Yeah,
yes.
To erase this from the board, and if you come back. But there's a way that you deliver it that doesn't sound immediately creepy. It sounds it sounds genuine, but when you're hearing it, you're just like, no,
that's not the path to go.
No, that's not. You
that's
wouldn't
so interesting because when I hear
everyone.
that as a woman, I immediately hear no.
Yeah. And I don't know if I'm just imparting Johnnie Hobbs Jr. on it, because I'm just thinking in the moment where he's like erratic, what's going on the phone, and it's just like wait, I'm trying to figure this out, but then you start to put all of this together. It's like, listen to the conversation on the phone.
Right.
Listen to how he references his wife on the phone. He refers to her as baby. And listen to how he refers to, why he's indisposed right now.
Right.
It's like, are either of these things important to you? In this moment. So it's just kind of like, something's not right here. The air gets thick and you're just, all right. I wanted to ask you both, because of the response I received just from saying I was going, what are your thoughts of this piece as artists, but also as theater goers? I mean, I guess think about it as from your first experience to this piece, to knowing that this piece is out there, like maybe your friends are in the show, or you want to see their take on it, or something like. What is your thought as a theater goer about this piece, and then if it is in contrast, how do you challenge that or address that as artists?
I oftentimes, when I first read it, number one, was reading it was very tedious. Very, very difficult, very tedious. It took me a long time to get through it. I had to go back and sort of say, is that what he's saying? You know, I had to sort of try to interpret what I was looking at and reading. And the challenge of doing it as an actor is extremely challenging, very tedious, very, very daunting. It's very difficult for me sometimes to, you know, commit it all to memory and to get it all and to be in sync with it. I'm still challenged by that. I have no problem saying that. I'm still working at that because I think the greatest acting happens when it's unconscious. Yeah. And I'm trying to get to that point. It's very, very difficult to get there. It's also very interesting doing it in particular in that space with predominantly white folks because they sit for the most part, I feel that they're sitting quietly and sort of ingesting the play and trying to understand it, as opposed to either a mixed group or a black group, you know, because black folks tend to talk to you. Yeah. They tend to talk about, but they're talking about the play. They're not talking about a party. They're talking about what they're seeing, and I have no problem with that. I think that both responses are valid. Somebody could be laughing, somebody could be crying, and it's engagement, and both responses are valid. Yeah. So all of that is, I mean, you know, my mind is erect with this thing. This is a very difficult thing. It takes me down a quagmire, you know, and. You know, I'm enjoyed working with someone like Jessica. She's very supportive. She's there. We are in the space together. We're in a fishbowl. You can't see anybody but us, and that's what Debbie kept saying. They're not going to see anybody but you. You're not going to be playing football. You're going to be in the space with your scene partner opposite there, and it's just extremely challenging, man. It's hard. It's not easy, and yet it's very short. It's just 75 minutes. Yeah, but I'm challenged. I'm completely challenged, and I'm sometimes completely miffed. It's problematic to me. I'm trying to reach the point where I'm unconscious with it, and that's where I am with it.
Yeah, Jessica.
So I think for me, can you repeat the question for me?
I was asking, how do you approach this piece as a theater goer, and if it's in contrast, how do you address it as an artist?
I think the approach is, for me, especially with this piece and the content of this piece, the approach that I take for both me as a theater goer and me as an artist are the same, in that the audience is the most important. It's bigger than us. Because if not, then I get lost in my own personal feelings about the things, and you know, I have to hold very tightly to Carol in it. Mamet is very challenging, but when I think about like what the audience is experiencing in terms of how we execute and the information that they gain from execution is thrilling to me. I really enjoy it, knowing that the way that this was written conveys something outside of what we are experiencing and what we are experiencing as actors technically, what we're experiencing from an artistic standpoint and from a character standpoint is really, like, at its core, really important and an important skill to have. I think when I think about it as a theater goer, I have days where I question, like, is there another play that was written now that doesn't deal with this? And when I think about it as an artist, I think, do I do a service or a disservice by being present? But I think I always think that. I don't think that it matters what the piece is or the content of the piece. It's a question of, am I serving this piece as well as it can be, and how can it be better? Because Mamet is very tedious, and if you do not ground yourself within that 75 minutes from the top, you are chasing it, and it's no fun. And then it's like, dear God, I'm really working and I'm sweating at this. It's like trying not to miss the train.
That's right.
But yeah. And I think that for me that's what's most important, not missing the train, because the audience has to take this full journey, so that they can leave with questions in their minds and all the feelings in their hearts and souls.
And also because it lights up appears to be like there are 5 pages missing.
Oh yeah, right.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
right. Like he drops us right in the middle.
What happened before this?
He drops us right in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
Would I be wrong in saying that Act 3 is the most challenging part of it, or are there other parts that are a little challenging for you?
I think all of them are challenging. I think the most challenging one for me is Act 1 because that sets everything up, sets him up, it sets his relationship up and where he's going, and there's so much information there. Yeah. So I think that's one of the more challenging ones for me. I can understand why you would say Act 3, but I think all of them are equally daunting in many ways.
Yeah. I'm just thinking in terms of the performance of it, it's like, to make this real, but also to be yourselves.
Yeah, right.
Of course, you're professionals, of
right.
course. But, I'm always thinking about the technical of all of it, but trying to suspend that while I'm sitting in the theater and just be the theater goer as well. But I feel like I walk out with those a lot, saying I wonder what the conversations are to, okay, we're approaching the scene.
Yeah, right.
And, there's so many pieces where they have that, where it's just like, today we're just going to talk about this scene.
Right. Oh, I got you.
Because we have to understand how we're going to enter into this space instead of just, we're not going to just run it and see what it feels like.
Right.
Yeah. We need to understand the foundation of where it.
Well, it's almost like, it's almost like at the end of Master Harold and the Boys, and the guy spits in the guy's face. He spits in his face. Well, the attitudes have to be right before a man can spit in another man's face. You just can't rehearse that every day.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it happens in a rehearsal. It happens obviously in a performance. But the attitudes have to be right. So you're right. There are things that happen before all of that happened. But it certainly is something worthy of investigating.
Yeah.
I think Act 3. I think Act 1 and Act 3 are really challenging. I think all of the acts are equally challenging. They have their own specific challenges. I think the end of Act 1 is challenging in terms of like coming down from the trauma of Carol's journey to then entering into like a real empathetic, earnest space into 3 and trying to navigate, because based on the way that the text is written, Carol is going in. She set him on fire, and like gasoline, matches lit. Let's do it. And we can't do that. Yes. Waiting to exhale.
Right.
Yeah. But like the way that I'm asked to deliver it is, Debbie and I used to joke, we'd be like, okay, this is Viola and not Carrie. Okay, we cannot just rip this man a new one.
Oh, that's great.
It's like, you're right. I cannot do that. Even though it's within the text, it's in the italics, it's in the it's in the capital letters, it's in the pauses. It's like no. Yeah.
Somebody write that into a play. I need you to be Viola, not Carrie.
Carrie, in this moment. A little too much Carrie in this moment. Walking away from 3 is really challenging.
Yeah.
Getting up and being like, oh, that's the end of the play.
Yeah.
And like not knowing where the audience is. I actually ran into, I went to go see a play, and I ran into someone that had seen opening night. And she was just like, how are you? And I was like, well, how are you? Because we don't, there's no care given to the audience. It's not a gentle piece. It doesn't end in a way that leaves
Everybody gets a hug on the way out.
Yeah, right? Everyone gets a hug and a piece of chocolate or a high five, like whatever you need, right? And there's no talkbacks.
Yeah.
So it's like, cool. Good luck. Godspeed. I hope that you don't say something damaging to your audience.
Right.
Ensemble members there.
I am strongly pro talkback discussion. I feel like in a regional space, maybe not so much here because there's so much going on. This place closed at 11 or whatever the time is. It's not always feasible, but I feel like you cannot just assume this audience is there with you for everything.
I know.
You got to give them space to unpack. And
Absolutely.
Don't we have an education component to our organizations as well? So that's the part that allows us, let's sit here and unpack this.
But this guy will find you.
So we can,
David Mamet will find you.
$25,000. But what is interesting is when I run out of here, I do see people in the street.
Yeah.
That's Kelly. We've got to go to the fight call. Is I do see people standing outside waiting and talking to people they don't know. In agreement or in disagreement is very interesting and beautiful, but also it's like, but what would happen if you gave people the space? And have you written something and been responsible enough to give people the space to know that their right and their wrong is personal? Or, like, did you stop having talkbacks because you knew people would spin in the fight and throw hands? Or did you just say, I don't want anybody to talk about my work and decide what my work has to be as an audience? Because I think that that's not fair either for the audience to come to some specific conclusion about what happens. But to not talk about it is like, especially this piece. Is like, woo, okay, well,
Well, whether you have thoughts of this piece already or you have not experienced it yet, it is Oleanna. It is played by David Mamet. It is on stage at the Independent Studio on 3. It is Walnut Street Theater. You can get your tickets by going to Walnut Street Theater, theaterre.org. Jessica Johnson, Johnnie Hobbs Jr. Thank you so much for taking the time to unpack this with me, and we'll see you in the theater.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Want to get involved with Broad Street Review? Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com. and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.